describing the formation of an ionic compound from its atoms. So let's start with an example. Describing the formation of lithium fluoride. So we form from lithium atoms and fluorine atoms. The lithium atom has a configuration 2,1. If you're not sure about that, watch the previous tutorial. When it forms an ion, it's going to lose the outer shell electron to form a positive ion. So we've formed our positive ion, our Li plus ion. And where does that electron go? We can imagine our electron being here, and now it will need to go somewhere. We're forming lithium fluoride from lithium atoms and fluorine atoms. So here is a fluorine atom. The electron which has been lost from lithium is transferred to a fluorine atom, like so. And as it's gained an electron, it now has one more negative particle, as in electrons, than positive particles, as in protons, so it will have a charge of -1. This is something we will now need to describe in terms of words. So, one lithium atom loses one electron. The electrons which are lost are transferred to fluorine, and one fluorine atom gains one electron. So hopefully that's clear. You may want to make a copy of this for your notes if you think this would be helpful. Our second example is sodium oxide. Sodium is in group 1, so that's something which is quite important. A sodium atom has the electron configuration 281. When it forms an ion, it will lose its outer shell electron to form an Na plus ion. Oxygen is in group 6 of the periodic table, so it has 6 electrons in its outer shell. To obtain a full outer shell, it will obviously need to gain 2 electrons. Sodium here has contributed 1 electron to its outer shell, but it still hasn't got a full outer shell. So this means we will need another sodium atom to become a sodium ion to lose an electron and donate that electron to oxygen, forming an oxide ion with a charge of 2-. Pause the video, think about how you could describe this, then push play. So the description would be 2 sodium atoms, each lose 1 electron each, and these electrons which are lost are transferred to oxygen. 1 oxygen atom gains 2 electrons. You may wish to copy this description down because you'll be answering a very similar question next, so it may be helpful to have a template to base your answer on. So let's look at magnesium chloride's formation from magnesium atoms and chlorine atoms. You can see here I've given you the atomic number for each of those. So given the atomic number, we could obviously write down the electron configuration of both atoms. So for magnesium, it would start with 2 in the first shell, which once it is full, the next electrons will go in the second shell, which can take a maximum of 8, meaning there will be only 2 electrons left in the outer shell. And we could do a similar process for chlorine, 2 in the first shell, 8 in the second shell. The first 2 numbers always add up to 10, so that's easy. 17 minus 10, meaning 7 electrons in the outer shell. We could obviously have worked this out by looking at the periodic table to find out that magnesium is in group 2 of the periodic table and that chlorine is in group 7 of the periodic table. Here is a picture showing the arrangement of electrons in a magnesium atom and also a chlorine atom. So now we need to think about how they become ions. Magnesium will become an ion by loss of 2 electrons and the chlorine will become an ion by the gain of 1 electron. So this showing a picture showing the magnesium atom, the chlorine atom, the magnesium ion and the chloride ion. So we can see that this here could lose 1 electron and the electron could be transferred to chlorine like this, which would give us this diagram here. However, magnesium has a second electron, so we need to do something with that electron. So let's have a look at the next slide and hopefully that will help answer the question. Think about it maybe beforehand and see if you can come up with a solution, such as thinking about the formula of magnesium chloride. You can see from our diagram the magnesium atoms on the left hand side and the ions which they form on the right hand side. So we can think about how this happens. The magnesium atom will lose one electron to go here and one electron to go here. So what happens? We have one magnesium atom losing 2 electrons, and these electrons, as we can see, are transferred to the chlorine atoms, so here and here. That means that in terms of what happens, we've got 2 chlorine atoms, each gaining 1 electron. So that's our description for formation of magnesium chloride. Again, you may want to copy this down so that you can answer this question more fluidly and just practice making sure you understand what has been shown on this slide. Describing the formation of potassium oxide. Here is a possible strategy. Firstly, work out the charges on ions which are formed. We can use this based on which groups the elements are found in. Secondly, once we know charges on the ions, we can work out how many electrons have been gained or lost in the formation of the ions. Thirdly, if we know the charges on the ions, we can actually work out the formulae of a compound, which will give us how many atoms of each element have gained or lost electrons. Let's apply this strategy. So, if we look at potassium oxide, firstly, we know potassium is in group 1 of the periodic table, so it forms 1+ ions. How does it do this? By losing 1 electron. Oxygen is in group 6 of the periodic table, so it forms 2- ions by gaining 2 electrons. The formulae, we obviously could use swap and drop, writing potassium with its charge to the top right, oxygen with its charge to the top right. Write down the size of the charge, the magnitude of a charge for potassium and oxygen, and use swap and drop to get the formula K2O. Why not pause the video, see if you can put down in words the description for formation of potassium oxide from its atom. So if we look at the text, we can see how I do it is we've got 2 potassiums in the formula, so we've got 2 potassium atoms, each losing 1 electron. Look at the formula. There's 1 oxygen here. These 2 electrons are transferred to oxygen, and each oxygen atom gains 2 electrons. So let's see that written down. So 2 potassium atoms each lose 1 electron. These electrons are transferred to oxygen. 1 oxygen atom gains 2 electrons. Write a description for formation of sodium nitride from its atoms. So sodium is in group 1 of a periodic table, so it will achieve Na+ ion by the loss of 1 electron. Nitrogen is in group 5 of the periodic table, and it will achieve an ion by the gain of 3 electrons. We could write the formula down, so Na something N, using swap and drop, we can see there's a 3 up here, so the formula is going to be Na3 N, we don't write ones, so we have our formula here. So we've got this, so we could now think about describing it using words. So let's go through it slowly. We've got 3 sodium atoms, each losing 1 electron. What happens? These electrons are transferred to nitrogen. How many nitrogens do we have? 1. So each nitrogen atom gains how many electrons? 3. So we put that in words. We have the following. 3 sodium atoms lose 1 electron. These electrons are transferred to nitrogen. 1 nitrogen atom gains 3 electrons. You may want to copy this down. So pause the video if you wish to, and then we'll move on to another example. Write a description for the formation of aluminium oxide from its atoms. Aluminium is in group 3 of a periodic table, so when it forms an ion, it will make an aluminium 3+ ion by the loss of 3 electrons. Oxygen is in group 6 of the periodic table, so it has 6 electrons in its outer shell. To obtain a full shell, it will need to gain 2 electrons. Formula of aluminium oxide, we use swap and drop. there's 2 up here, so we can write that down here. So Al2O3. Again, what does this formula mean? It means there are 2 aluminium ions with a charge of 3 plus and 3 oxide ions. How was this achieved? 2 aluminium atoms each lost 3 electrons. These electrons were transferred to 3 oxygen atoms, which each gained 2 electrons each. So here it is written out just again, so you may want to see it. 2 aluminium atoms each lose 3 electrons. These electrons are transferred to oxygen. 3 oxygen atoms each gain 2 electrons. I hope you're all happy with that. If you have any questions, do feel free to email me. Take care.